Welcome back. Today I was going to go through at least a few moves of this game that I played not too long ago, in which the game review said I had 4 great moves. If you play on chess.com and you've run the game review every now and then, you've noticed that they've added the category brilliant move. I haven't gotten many of those, but occasionally I have a great one, which is the next best move below that. And on this one, in every case, it says this is the only good move and you found it. So let's take a look and see if they were really that great. Okay, here in this position, after move 12, which I have pulled my bishop back from being in danger of that pawn, the pale green check mark means good move. It's not excellent, it's not the best, but it's okay. But if you can see the evaluation bar on the left, my opponent has a significant advantage here after just, again, 12 moves. It's minus 3.9. And here my opponent blunders, and that is playing their bishop out. Now I understand their idea. Number one, I assume they were about to preparing to castle and also developing their final piece, their final minor piece that hasn't developed yet. That probably seemed like a good square for them to develop to. And the reason it was a blunder is because of the great move that I found. And again, that only counts as a blunder if I find the great move. Well, I almost didn't find the great move here, but my thinking was, rather than castling on their next turn, they might just sacrifice this bishop for my knight in order to damage the pawn structure. They might have sensed that they had an advantage at this point. They had a knight down here kind of patrolling the possible squares I can move rooks to, and I thought if they attack this and I take it back, I mean, that wouldn't be horrible, trading a bishop for a knight or trading my knight for their bishop with so many open diagonals already on this board. I mean, there's a long dark square diagonal already open here, not to mention the one that they're currently on. So I thought that might not actually be that bad, but I don't like separating pawns if I don't have to. I've already got these two separated from the rook pawn over here. There's a gap between them. And of course, there's this gap here. And if that one comes over, there's going to be another gap between my pawns. So I'm going to have, 4 pawn islands at that point. I'm going to have this, and then that one that came over here. These pawns could work together, and then this one way over here. That's, but I was like, well, I can defend that, can't I? I thought I could defend it by moving my king up, but then I wasn't sure about that. What if they could pull this knight over here to d4 and check me, and it'd be protected by this pawn? And then I'd have to put the king back, and then they could go ahead with that anyway. So I got a flash of brilliance. I can protect that knight this way. Well, that turns out to be a great move. And I didn't even realize it until I moved it, that, it also attacks this knight. But I don't know if you would consider that great or not. It turns out to be the only good move in the position. And again, the game review says you were now threatening to win material. There was only one good move and you found it. Well, and as it turns out here, what my opponent did was take the knight anyway, which I don't know if that was their best move in that position or not, but it allows me to then choose which piece I wanted to take at that point. Now I chose the bishop because that was the whole point of moving it up there in the first place, was to not damage my pawn structure. But anyway, that was my first great move. My second great move came about a little bit later, after I took that bishop and that knight had escaped and I had pulled the pawn up behind it. I played this, which turned out to be a mistake, and the game is about even at this point. Just 4 moves later, this is a mistake, and my opponent makes their best move, moving away from that pawn to a place where that knight is protected. And here, the next move that I made was considered great. My thinking here was that this knight that has just escaped my pawn is probably about to come back right here. Right here would be a pretty nice outpost square for it, because I can't attack it with any pawns, for one thing. It would be protected by this pawn that I couldn't get to. Maybe my only choice at that point would be to take it, sacrificing my bishop for their knight there. And I also thought if I didn't take it, it could be aiming right here, which would, of course, fork my rook and king. So I thought, what if I take it now? I've already got rid of both of their bishops. I have the bishop pair, 2 bishops to 2 knights. But what if I took it now, instead of letting it come down here? And that seemed like a pretty good plan, because then I assume they would take back with their pawn. That would leave them with double isolated pawns in the middle, already blockaded by my e-pawn, the front one of which is already a target. So that's what I did, and that turned out to be a great move. It says, this is the way to win material. This is the only move that works, and you found it. So just like the other one, I don't know that these moves are great. They look like only moves, and as it turns out, if you move back one and look at the list of suggested moves, let's do that here just a second. Okay, the list of suggested moves is now on the screen. It's showing that that's the only move that maintains equality at this point. Any other move I make gives black an advantage. And it's saying that my second best move is king to d1 and my third best move is king to d2. Well, and then it says that they're going to put that knight here. I honestly didn't even think of putting it over there. Well, of course, that would be better than where I thought they might put it, because at least over here I could take it with this bishop. And, they would end up with doubled pawns on the F file. But over here, I don't have any way to take that right now. So, if I had thought of that, I think I still would have come to this same conclusion. I trade off a minor piece for a minor piece and get the pawn. So to me, that doesn't seem like a great move. It just seems like an only move. Like, what else am I going to do? Move a rook up, move a rook over. I guess I could have moved a rook over. But anyway, let's go on to the next one. The next great move in this game came about 15 moves later. I've lost count, but maybe 12 moves later. We're on move 28 now. I have just doubled my rooks on the 7th rank. Rooks on the 7th, very nice. I haven't done this very often, but I have learned that it very often works. I'm getting really close here to threatening this. If I take that pawn, the king's going to have to move over. Then I'm going to move over. It's going to have to come back. And then my second rook here is going to be mate, I think. I thought I was getting pretty close, and I do have a significant advantage. Now, my opponent played that. That turns out to be a pretty good move on their part, because it keeps this from being a mating situation. Because now when I take this and the king moves over and I go over and the king comes back and I bring my second rook, it's not mate, because now the king has an escape square now that rook's out of the way. So that turned out to be a very good move on my opponent's part. I don't know that I would have seen that. When that rook here, that rook is trapping the king in these 2 squares. So maybe if I'd given it some time, I would have found it. But kudos to my opponent for finding this move. But now what do? I thought, well, it's not going to be mate anymore, because as I just showed you, they're going to have an out here in a second. But I can still take this pawn with check. They can't do anything else, right? Like, the bishop is hanging, but it's not hanging if I check. And then when they move and I check again and they come back and I check again and they come over here, then I can move the bishop. Maybe not there because the knight's guarding that spot, but I could move it someplace. So maybe someplace that they, wouldn't capture it, like here, because by then my rook would be here. So I took that pawn. Well, the computer says it says you trade off equal material. What? This is the only move that works and you found it. Well, number one, the message is wrong. I'm not trading off equal material. I just took a pawn. Oh, unless it's counting that. Did they just take a pawn there? Oh, okay. Yeah, they just took a pawn there and I took a pawn. So I guess it was an even trade. And it said, this is the only move that works and you found it. Well, again, as I just said, like, what else did I have? Before I did that, if I moved the bishop here, they could still take it. But now they can't, because now I have a rook guarding that spot. And my next great move was on my next turn, when the king went that way instead of the way that it had originally planned to go. Well, here, my thinking was, I now don't want to do this, because their rook guards that spot, right? So I can threaten mate and give up this bishop for the threat of mate. This is what I thought. I thought I can go here. If they take my bishop at that point, well, then that's checkmate. Coming down to the corner on h8. If you're hearing some noise, we're finally getting some rain. I don't know if the mic is picking that up or not, but this is very significant. A week or so ago, we got a couple of drops of rain after a bunch of thunder. Sounded like it was going to really wet things down, but it didn't. But now we've actually had steady rain for several minutes, so that's nice. We haven't had rain in a long time. Okay, but anyway, you see what I'm saying. I go here. If they take the bishop, I have checkmate, because their king isn't there anymore guarding the corner square. And if they do something to guard against checkmate, which I'm not sure what they could do at that point, don't know exactly what their plan would be, well, then I would just take this pawn, maybe. That was my thinking. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know if there was a really good place to move the bishop. There still really isn't. The rook takes it here or here. If I put it here, can't the rook just go behind it? It's not looking really good for my bishop. There, the pawn takes it, the knight takes it, the knight takes it. I don't know. Maybe it would have been safe temporarily over there. But then once I move the bishop, then I'm opening myself up to a check, and I'm going to have to go here, and they're going to check me again. We're either going to repeat moves, or I could do the thing where you kind of get closer to the rook, but I don't know. So I just went over there, and it says that's a great move. It says, good job creating a checkmate threat. There was only one good move, and you found it. Okay, well, great. And again, I did end up winning this game. My opponent made at least another mistake. And so I don't know about great, quote-unquote, great moves in all of these game reviews, but I know that in this one, each one of them seemed to be an only move. And I don't always find only moves. Sometimes Stockfish will find an only move, the only move that maintains an advantage, or the only move that doesn't give your opponent a huge advantage, is unseeable by a human at my level with my limited knowledge of chess. But these, I think all of these were just, you look around the board for a few seconds and like, what else can you do? They're all not forced in the sense of you have to move out of check or something like that, but they're forced in the sense that nothing else makes sense. Anything else blunders a piece, or blunders a series of never-ending checks, or loses my ability to checkmate. So anyway, that's my review of these great moves, and that's all I wanted to do was go through and see if they were actually great. I don't think they are. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.